All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the 2026 Bay Mini Grant webinar and Q&A. Hopefully you're in the right place. My name is Jessica Lewis. I'm the Community Projects Manager at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. If you will, go ahead and throw your name and your organization, your entity, whatever, into the chat, just so we know who all is here. Carly Jones is also here. Carly, you want to do a quick intro? Just wave. Yeah, that's great too. Cool. Okay.
An intro if you want.
No, you're good. So during this webinar, if y'all want to stay on mute and stay off camera, otherwise you're going to be recorded on the Tampa Bay Estuary Program YouTube for all of time. And then when we get to the questions, you can come off mute, add your camera back, and then we can just chat together. If you would like, you can go ahead and put questions into the chat throughout the webinar so we can make sure that we get to everything at the end. And this is being recorded, so you can refer back to it. I'll also add the slides online so you can have access to those. So, as we're getting started, just a quick sort of temperature check. Um, if you are definitely applying this year and you're just here to sort of get tips on making your application the best it can be, in the chat, put a plus plus symbol. If you're leaning toward applying, but you're not 100% sure yet, you just want to get some more info to make sure it's a good fit, put like a slash in the chat. And then if you're thinking about applying maybe next year, but you just don't know about this program and you want to figure out if it's going to be a good fit for a future year, just put like a question mark or something like that. Cool. So it sounds like most of y'all are either definitely applying or leaning towards applying. Cool. Good to know. All right, let's continue. Carly, as if anybody new pops in, if you'll just ask them sort of to add their information too, that would be great. All right, this should take a little less than 40 minutes. So I'm going to give you an overview. We're going to talk about eligibility, how to apply, evaluation criteria, and the timeline for applications and projects. And then you can ask me all your questions. Hopefully, I will have answers for you. All the information that we're going to talk about today is on our website. So Carly's going to put the link in there. You've probably all seen it. If you're here, you registered. But everything that I'll talk about is on this website, including the recording from today. So I don't know if you know, but all of those fancy license plates that you see on Florida vehicles, they're all tied to a specific organization or purpose. So when someone buys the Tampa Bay Estuary license plate that you see here, it funds this Bay Mini Grant program. So you'll see in the evaluation criteria that you can get extra points for helping us advertise this license plate to increase sales so we can keep doing these kinds of projects and increasing funding for Bay Mini Grants. So just a heads up. And of course, we at the Estuary Program manage the Bay Mini Grants, just to be clear. So, what is the point of Bay Mini Grants anyway? Because Floridians support the program by buying that license plate, like I mentioned, we want to give these funds back to the community in a way that also supports our mission of protecting and restoring Tampa Bay. So these are our program priorities. Bay Mini Grant funding is used to engage communities in Tampa Bay in hands-on environmental restoration or conservation projects, or to educate locals about environmental issues and solutions and their own role in a healthy and thriving estuary ecosystem. We'll talk a little more about that in a bit. These are the sort of logistical basics of Bay Mini Grants. The awards are up to $5,000. Funds are reimbursed after they're spent on project expenses. That's what cost reimbursable means. And projects run for 1 calendar year. So right now, these applications that are open are for projects that will occur between January and December 2026. Just about any type of formally recognized organization is eligible to apply for Bay Mini Grants. Because this program is meant to give back to the community, governments that apply need to show an even stronger community engagement aspect for their projects. That's why there's just a little asterisk there. Individuals cannot apply, but if you're just a person with a great idea and you really want to get it funded, approach a local nonprofit or small business in the watershed and see if they're interested in being your administrative sponsor. We've had that happen before, or with community groups that are loosely organized but don't have a formal 501(c)(3) or something like that. They can pair up with other organizations, and they're often happy to support this work, especially if you, as the project manager, are someone that's willing to sort of push this project forward. Projects must be in the Tampa Bay watershed. So you can see that watershed outline, that red line in the map there, from Lakewood Ranch to Wesley Chapel, from Seminole to Bradley Junction. All of this area eventually drains into the bay, and it's all eligible for Bay Mini Grant funding. Carly, I think you're going to throw in the watershed map in the chat as well. If you aren't sure if your project is eligible because it's maybe right on the border, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to give you some more insight into how that might work. I want to point out this kid. If you can get a kid this excited about squid, we're gonna figure out a way to get you some funding. So these kinds of photos are really helpful for your Bay Mini Group project. Anyway, I wanted to give you the basics first, but now let's sort of dig into the details, starting with those environmental restoration, conservation, and education goals. The CCMP is short for the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan for Tampa Bay. And I'll say CCMP because I don't want to say that 100 times more. It's basically a guide for protecting and restoring Tampa Bay. This plan is regularly updated to reflect the latest science, techniques, and needs of our watershed. And your application must align with one of the goals outlined in the CCMP. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how to use this in your project. And Carly, if you want to put in the CCMP website link in the chat, that would be great. So this is just a little recording. When you go to the CCMP on our website, you can explore what's there to get inspiration for a project. You can sort of click around on these different icons, or you can just go to find the CCMP goal that aligns with the idea that you already have. You can see that our 3 program priorities are listed there with the goals under each one of them. Also, so it's listed here on the website, but also the basic CCMP goals are listed in the application information document, which I'm showing you here in this recording. In your application, when you're referencing the CCMP goal that you're addressing with your project, you can just copy and paste it right into your scope of work. I'll try to remember to show you that when we're looking at a scope of work example, as well as the template in just a little bit. These are examples of past projects. Your project definitely does not have to fall in line with these. In fact, I really think that using your expertise and your background, your organization's niche, or your business's unique customer base, or whatever it is a really great way to come up with a cool new project concept. So I give you this to sort of give you examples of things that have been funded in the past, but don't feel limited to these kinds of past projects for sure. These are some more past projects. What you may not notice from this list is that many of these projects include both a hands-on restoration component and an education component. Our review team really likes to see both of those work together in a single project. So we're going to talk about what actually makes a really great Bay Mini Grant project now. The most important piece of sort of the formula of a great Bay Mini Grant is the environmental benefit. So going back to those CCMP goals that I mentioned, think about how your project could improve or provide some benefit to the water quality, to the habitat, to the wildlife, etc. in the watershed. That's the most important piece. Pretty close to that is some sort of direct and active community involvement. It's really important. That could mean planting trees for a restoration project or having the community select a mural design in the neighborhood. You can really get creative there with the direct, active community involvement. You should bring in your organizational or individual expertise or niche to add creativity to your project. Create a plan in advance so everyone knows their role, the project goals, and how the work will flow over the course of the year. Advanced planning really gives you an edge when you're submitting a Bay Mini grant application. Collaborate with partners. Make sure to get letters of support from any partners that you do include in your application. You can be really creative on who partners are for an application or a project. And to add just a little bit extra, you can address one of this year's funding priorities. Don't feel like you need to fit within that funding priority, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. It just adds a little bit extra on top. If you do all of these things, though, you're going to have a really great Bay Mini Grant project. So keep these different pieces in mind as you're putting together your application. Probably my favorite part of the job is coming up with Bay Mini Grant project ideas. I just like am randomly writing stuff down all the time. Here's a short list of ideas that I and other staff have come up with to inspire your next Bay Mini Grant project if you're not quite sure what you want to do. Feel free to rip these ideas right off the page or just take the concept and sort of fit it into the goals that you already have outlined. And I'm really happy to talk with you one-on-one about your project ideas too. We're going to get a little more specific about submitting a strong application now. So all the materials I'll reference, like I said, are on the website. Read all these materials before you get started. It's not a ton of info, but knowing everything before you start putting materials together is really going to help make sure that you're organized and like answering the right question in the right place and that kind of thing. This is my recommendation for the flow of how to apply. Hopefully, at this point, you've read through the application materials. Maybe you're in the drafting phase right now. Maybe you've already reached out to partners to discuss their role in the potential project and to get letters of support from them. There's a couple of blanks here that you might notice. Uh, I really recommend scheduling a brief meeting with me to talk about your project idea, to talk about how drafting your project is going along. And then you can also just send me your entire draft application. I say to send it by August 4th, which I know is right around the corner. If you send it by August 4th, I will make sure to get you detailed feedback. We can have time to set up a meeting so that you have time to make those edits and changes with your application before the deadline of submitting on September 10th. You are welcome to submit a draft after August 4th, but I can't guarantee that I'll actually be able to spend a lot of time with you editing, improving, strengthening your application if it's submitted after that date. You still totally can, though. It is not a requirement to meet with me. It is not a requirement to send me your draft, but I do think it really helps improve your application. So, as I said, read all the application materials. That's a starting point. That's not required. I just told you all that. You're welcome to stay after today too if you have really specific project questions. But I can help you sort of like gut check the direction you're going, help you brainstorm, maybe get some partners, all that good stuff. So when you're actually starting your application, make your own copy of each of the documents that I showed you in that screenshot. So scope of work, draft budget, application cover sheet, all that stuff. Then you edit your own copy. So you don't need to request access to edit the Google Docs, just make a copy and edit it from there. The application document is just used to compile your answers. You'll then copy your answers from this document into the online application portal. So this is used for you to draft all your information in advance, make sure you've got everything together before you start applying. There are also tips throughout each of these documents in teal text. So that's sort of like a little extra reminder of like, oh yeah, make sure to do this here or include that there, whatever it is. The scope of work is really the bulk of your application. It is the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your project. This document is how you'll communicate to the review team who is reviewing all these applications, what your project's all about, how you'll accomplish it, what your experience and background is, all of that good stuff. Use the template. We do provide a template. Make sure to use that. We have updated it from recent years, so if you applied in the past or even received an award in the past, just make sure to use this year's template. Spell out exactly which CCNP goals your project addresses. Tell the reviewers what success looks like for this project through specific metrics that are measurable, actionable. Describe what deliverables you'll provide to show us how you've met your goals. So, the number or the piece of paper associated with those success metrics. Write out the timeline of the 12-month project. This is something that is not only going to help the reviewers know that you've thought about this in advance, but also help you and your team be ready to actually execute this if and when you do get the grant award. Lastly, provide a short, compelling story about the inspiration of your project. This is sort of where you're going to hook the reviewers. It's where you can be a little bit more descriptive in the background and why you want to do this project in the first place, what sort of need you're addressing. Yeah, be feel free to really sort of tell a story in that narrative. The review team is composed of volunteers on the Tampa Bay Estuary Program Community Advisory Committee. So keep your scope of work document to 4 pages or less. Concise, plain language is best. These reviewers are volunteers, they're not getting paid to do it. They may not be experts in whatever your project, whatever subject matter your project is on. So just be really plain and clear, like you're communicating to the general public because you are. I am going to open up. Yeah, so this is an example of a scope of work that's provided on the website. This is the name of the project. It's short, to the point. These are the goals of this project lined out here, and you can see how they've included the CCNP goals right there. And then the metrics are included here. So the goal is to carry out a Bay Mini Grant project successfully. That's a great goal. How do we know that you're actually gonna, what is the thing that tells us that you've met that success? Submitted the reports on time, provided copies of anything that came from the grant, provide photos, advertise the tarpon tag. So those are the metrics that I, as a project manager from the estuary program, can sort of check off and be like, yes, they did this, or no, they didn't, and let's keep working on it. And how I know that you did those metrics, that you accomplished those metrics, is through the deliverables. So these are sort of like the proof of reaching your success metrics. And there are multiple different examples here in this example scope of work. So engaging 100 volunteers for 5 oyster bag installation events. How you can say, yes, I achieved this successfully is a minimum of 60 volunteers. So this is sort of this is what we're reaching for, the 100 volunteers at 5 events. At a bare minimum, to say that we succeeded, 60 volunteers at 3 events. So this is like the goal that you're really reaching for, and this is what you think is the bare minimum to say you accomplished it. And how you tell us, how you demonstrate that you did accomplish that is through sign-in sheets at those volunteer events and photos and videos from those volunteer events. So hopefully you can kind of see the flow of how this goal, success metric, and deliverables are all different, but the same sort of thing. And I'm happy to help walk you through this if you're not sure how this relates to your project or what to put for your project. Next, we've got the timeline here, adding in communications, materials, planning, how much you're going to spend each month. This should be detailed enough to demonstrate that you've thought through how this project will go, but it is flexible. So if you get the award, once we get to the phase of like actually putting together your final scope of work, it's okay for this to be an estimate. Like maybe the email announcement goes out in December, the month before. Maybe 5 volunteer events start getting planned in early February, whatever it is. So this is really just a timeline estimate. And then you've got your narrative, where we're talking about sort of hooking the reviewers. Tell them your inspiration, tell them, who the partners are, who's going to be involved, what the role is of each of those partners, how many people you would expect to come to an event, and just any kind of information that you think is relevant for the review team to understand your project. So this is an example. I think it's a pretty good example. And then here is the template. Again, you've got a ton of instructions here. You've got some tips in teal text. You can use any of these examples from the template. There's a ton of them, so try to find one that works best with whatever your goals are and sort of relate it back to that. I'm obviously not going to read through all of these, but feel free to check them out when you're ready. Project timeline and project narrative. So those are the basics there. Let's go back to this document here. Okay, so we went over the scope of work. Let's go to the evaluation criteria. So this is how your application is going to be scored after you turn it in. There are 14 specific criteria broken into a couple of sections here. Together, these criteria are trying to get at that special combination that we went over earlier. The environmental benefit, the community engagement, creativity, collaboration, planning, all that good stuff. I really can't overstress how important it is to communicate clearly and concisely. I've seen some really potentially great projects go unfunded because the application just didn't lay things out well. It didn't really tell the story of what you were trying to do clearly. Community engagement is a foundational piece of the Bay Mini Grant program, so make sure to tell us how you're going to use that community engagement to create future stewards of our estuary. Letters of support are important. Make sure any partner that you mention in your application has provided a letter of support. Make sure it's clear what those partners are doing in the project and they're not just like thrown out there without a description of how they're going to engage. Make sure you describe your plan. That timeline is very important as well. And then know that you can get 5 bonus points for being a new applicant or for being a past applicant that is in some way helping sort of build up stewardship in other smaller organizations. So there's bonus points there for either of those. I recommend using these criteria to score your own application before you submit it. Or maybe even you have someone who's been uninvolved in the project, uninvolved in the application, score it with fresh eyes so they can give you some feedback from someone who hasn't looked at it for days and weeks at a time. Like I mentioned, the funding priorities. Your project doesn't have to address one of these funding priorities, but if you do, you could receive a boost of up to 5 points in your application. So engaging rural communities, homeowner, condo owner, or neighborhood associations, communities whose primary language is not English. We have obviously huge Spanish populations, Spanish speaking populations, but we also have Vietnamese, Haitian Creole, all kinds. Promote environmental stewardship through art. I think that is a really great opportunity with many grants. Or build the expert pipeline of early career professionals. The budget spreadsheet is the second most important part of your application. This is what the template looks like. That's linked in the materials. Make sure to use the template. Make sure to provide enough detail. Complete every cell in each row. Abide by the restrictions that I'm going to mention in a moment. And double check your math. Those are my tips for the budget. What does it mean to provide enough information? So this example is a native plant. You can see the name of the plant, what size it is, how much each one costs, how many they want to buy, then total cost broken out between Bay Mini Grants funds and matching funds. Matching funds are not required, but if you have matching funds, it I think helps your application be that much more competitive. In this example, they don't have any matching funds, so it says none. So each cell should be completed. There should be something in each cell, even if it's NA for not applicable, even if it's 0, whatever it is. This is adequate detail. This is a good, straightforward example. This project example involves buying equipment. There's adequate detail. They've said they've included quotes. So for this utility trailer that they want to buy, they've included 3 quotes in their supporting documents, which is helpful for the review team to say, okay, they've done due diligence to figure out this is like the best option for their equipment purchase. They're telling us why they need this equipment. And hopefully, that information is even more detailed in the scope of work. They've got matching funds that they're using. They've described the source of those matching funds. So this is another good, straightforward example that has enough detail and explanation. And of course, more information would be included in the scope of work too. Okay, I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute, but maybe it sounds normal to everyone, hopefully. In this example, we're showing you 2 different ways to lay out the exact same information. So notice that the totals are the same, but on the top example, it's all in one row, and on the bottom example, it's broken out as 3 different items. These are both good examples. You just need to decide if lumping or splitting is a better way to show that you're planning how you're planning to spend your money. So think about that. You certainly can reach out to me if you're not sure, but these are just 2 different ways that you can provide the same information, and they're both good examples. All right, those prohibitions that I mentioned for the budget, you cannot use Bay Mini Grant funds to purchase or print clothing, so like t-shirts for events, that kind of thing. There are a bajillion t-shirts in the world. Let's try not to produce too many more. We can't use it for lobbying. You can't use it for non-native flora or fauna. You obviously can use it for native plants. And items or services purchased before the grant starts are not eligible. So if you get notice that you're awarded, don't start spending money until the project actually starts, and I'll talk about that in a second. And you can't pay for things that are not included in the scope of work. If you decide down the road that you need to change your budget a little bit, we can amend your scope of work and your budget, but that's a conversation that we need to have explicitly and have like a paper trail of making that decision. Also, there are a few restrictions on the amount you can spend for certain things. So no more than 10% of the total Bay Mini Grant budget can be spent on mileage. No more than 25% of the Bay Mini Grant budget can be spent on food. And there are specific requirements for reimbursing food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that you can see there. Obviously, it's difficult if you think there's going to be between 20 and 25 people at an event and only 21 show up or whatever. Like, it's somewhat flexible, of course. We want you to make sure that you have enough resources there for every person that's going to show up, but do your best to estimate very closely to what you think reality will be for a meal if it's included. And then salary is allowed to be included in Bay Mini Grant budgets. We recently changed this stipulation so that there's no firm limit on how much of your Bay Mini Grant budget can be used on salary. You could request $5,000 for salary if you wanted to. However, I don't think that that's competitive. I don't think that more than 25% of your Bay Mini Grant budget is going to be competitive. So you certainly could do that if you wanted to, if there's a really strong component, really strong argument for why you need that funding just for staff. But you're going to need to make that argument in your application. Send your draft to me by August 4th or after, but after, it's up to the the calendar that happens in my world, whether or not I can get information back to you timely. So if you can send that to me, even if it's a very rough draft, a really rough outline, even if you just want to chat and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, that's okay. Just reach out sooner than later so we can figure that out together. Compile your letters of support and other documents. Other documents could be maps if you have a physical location. any kind of, like I mentioned, quotes for the more expensive materials or equipment is helpful. There's a 5-page limit to other documents, so you can submit multiple letters of support, but don't submit more than 5 pages of maps or quotes or whatever it is. So keep that in mind. Review your materials, of course, especially if you send it to me in advance. Make sure to incorporate some of that feedback, make those edits, finalize your materials well in advance of September 10th, and then submit your complete application online by 5 p.m. on September 10th. That includes your scope of work and your budget. Both of those are required documents. It's the bare minimum that you have to submit with your application. The letters of support are optional, but I've talked about how important they are. The maps, quotes, whatever you have are optional, but those are important as well. Other supporting documents, not to exceed 5 pages. So make sure that you have all of this put together. Don't wait until 4 p.m. on September 10th, please. We will not accept any application submitted late, and we will not accept any application that is incomplete. So make sure to get your ducks in a row before September 10th. There is a 30 megabyte file limit for uploading materials. So make sure to try, 2 days before September 10th, submit your final application. Make sure that you're not going to run into any tech issues. If you do, then you can call me and be like, hey, I'm having this problem. Do you have any recommendations? And you've got at least a day of wiggle room there. So just don't wait until the last minute. That's a really strong recommendation. The timeline. So September 10th, 5 p.m., applications are due. In October, between September 10th and October, the Community Advisory Committee members are going to be reviewing applications, deciding what their recommendation is going to be for funding. In November, those who are going to be awarded are notified. Those who are not going to be awarded are notified. If you are not awarded the Bay Mini grant, we do give you feedback on how to improve the application because we do want you to be successful. We want truly to fund anyone who wants to do something good for restoring or protecting Tampa Bay. So we're here to help for sure. Then after the notification, you and I will work together to come up with your final scope of work, your final sort of plan of attack for your project. And then in December, we work out a contract together. Once that contract is complete, you've signed it, we've signed it, all that good stuff, we'll send you sort of a notice to proceed in the form of a purchase order. And that says, okay, from this date forward, your project has started, you can start buying stuff, you can start doing stuff and all that good stuff. So like I said, don't buy anything before that notice to proceed is issued. Even if we notify you, if you haven't gotten that notice to proceed, don't start buying stuff yet. The project timeline, we want all projects to begin by January 1st, 2026. That's flexible, but it needs to be pretty close to that. February and August, there are 2 different progress reports due. We have templates for those, so you don't have to create that on your own. And they're pretty straightforward, just those metrics like how many volunteer events you've had, how many plants you've planted, whatever it is. By December 31st, your project should totally wrap up, and January 31st is the date in which you'll submit your final report and your final invoice. You can submit up to 4 invoices per year, or you can wait, up to you. But the deadline for submitting all of your materials is January 31st, 2027. Okay, that was a lot of info. Here's the overview. Who can apply? What is the program? When does this work take place? When should I apply? Where are the projects funded? Why do these BAM grants exist in the first place? And how do I get the grant? So this is the basic overview. The slides are available if you want to take a screenshot, whatever is most helpful. This is just wrapping up everything we just talked about. Okay, so I'm pretty much done talking 100 miles an hour. So we're going to go back to the chat. If you, from this information, feel like you have a better understanding, you feel like you're definitely ready to apply, you're going to go ahead and finish getting your materials together, put a plus plus in the chat. If you aren't sure, you need to get some ducks in a row in the next couple of weeks to make sure that your application is going to be ready to submit on time and that you can carry out that project next year, put a slash slash. You think you're going to get there, but maybe need some support. And if you've decided, you know what, I'm not quite ready to do this, I'm going to wait until next year, then put a minus minus. I'm going to look at the chat, which has disappeared for me. Megan, I love the plus slash. Great. Cool. Okay. Good to know. For those of you who have that, like, well, for anybody, reach out with questions, just even to get a vibe check on what you're doing. Happy to help steer you in the right direction. Now we are going to take questions. So turn your cameras on. I'm going to exit this, stop sharing my screen. And Carly, if you don't mind, uh, going towards the top and telling me where questions started, that would be great.
Yep, we only had one, which was how they can contact you to send drafts.
Yep, email me. Let me put that's my email address and my office number. Either way, reach out. If I can talk, I definitely will. Totally fine to just call me out of the blue. That was the only question in the chat.
Indeed.
Okay. All right. Well, y'all better have some questions. Come off mute if you have a question.
Hi, I have a question, but yeah. Go, Megan.
Oh, no, I plan on emailing Jessica with my questions and setting up a short meeting, but maybe we can ask it here. I was curious if a project would still be eligible if it extended beyond the watershed.
Depends. Yeah. So some examples in the past are like an educational kayak trip that was partially not in the watershed. So some of it was in Tampa Bay, some of it was in I want to say like St. Joe Bay, which is very close to the watershed, but it served students that lived in the watershed. So that's an example of where it's like kind of a gray area and we can talk through that to see if it's eligible and how to make it like a strong case for funding that kind of thing. So it is possible. It's definitely possible. Another example is if your organization's office is on the east side of Lakeland, which is technically out of the watershed, but you're doing work in the west side of Lakeland, so that's eligible too. So it's a gray area. The answer is yes, it's possible. And let me know what your specific thing is, and we can work through it. Yep. Maria, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. First thing is, which is the best time to get in contact with you? What's the best time for you? What tends to be a good time?
I think my work schedule is more frenetic than most, so I just recommend calling or emailing, and if I can't answer the call right then, I'll call you back very soon. Or you can
Awesome.
email me with some availability over a couple of days, and I'll send you a calendar invitation, and we can do it that way.
That way. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is, um, no, no, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. If you do come up with that question, let me know.
Yeah.
Other questions? can't have done that good of a job, guys. Somebody's got to have a question.
Jessica, it's Katie, sorry.
Yeah,
I'd come
you're good.
off camera, but it's a little bit crazy at my house right now. So, um, can you explain, from the same entity, like if I was assisting somebody else on a grant, but they're the main person from UF IFAS extension, and then I'm going after something completely different project scope, um, how, like, do we cancel each other out for qualifying with that, or how would we tackle that? So,
Yeah. Are both of the applicants the same IFAS extension office?
no.
In that case, you're totally fine.
Okay.
Like, yeah, you can be a partner, write a letter. Hang on. At least it happened at the end. Um, you can write a letter of support, whatever it is, for as many projects as you're part of, and that doesn't cancel you out.
Thank
So Jennifer, I remember my question. More or less, how many awards are given per year?
So far, we've had 40 to 50 applications a year, and we've funded roughly 20. It depends on the funding amount that's requested. I'm not actually crying, sorry. Anyway, we can generally fund between 80,000 to 100,000 a year.
Mhm. Okay, gotcha.
Zach, I see your question. Yeah, you can totally, your project can be less than a year. I had a project this year that finished in March. So yeah, they've been done. Okay. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much
Yep.
for coming. Um, really
Thank
appreciate y'all being here. Oh, Maria, do you have one more question?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the information.
Yeah, for sure. And I look forward to hearing from y'all. Send me your drafts, send me your questions, and I hope to see some really great project ideas and really great applications. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jessica.